Hey everyone, welcome to the channel, All Things Middle-earth, with a video here on R10 items for the commanders. I think we need some serious adjustments to the items themselves or how the mechanic works with R10 items. I want to talk about that today and hopefully we can get some attention on this issue because I think it's something that is a big problem in the game. All right, so I got 2 points here I want to cover. I'm going to do this as fast as I can because I don't want to lose people just talking, around the same thing over and over again. I want to be really clear here because I do think we need this addressed. Number one, if you're not familiar with this, if you're playing in Season 1 and have not gone into Season 2 yet, once you get a commander to respect 10, you can then unlock their special R10 item. For Dwalin here, the example I'm going to talk about the most today is the twin axes, but every single commander has a unique item you can click on and look at. So there are 3 things I want to talk about in regards to R10 items that I think need to changed or at least adjust at the very least. Number one is going to be the cost. Now for tier 1 R10 items, they're not so bad. The mithril that you need for it is not horrible and you do get it slowly over time. So tier 1s, even tier 2s is not as horrible. I've been playing on this account. This is my 6th season. I haven't outright bought any mithril. And as you can see here, if I click on the right tab, I have 102 of the blue. I have 206 of the blue, 102 of the purple, and I have 12 of the gold. Now to unlock, you need 60. And then for refinement, it goes 60, 60, 120, 120, and 180, I believe. So do the math, it's a lot. Now, I think, first of all, there needs to be an adjustment because the tier 3, it's already so expensive to get a tier 3 commander to R10. And I think the scaling from tier 1 to tier 2 to tier 3 is kind of ridiculous. So I feel like there needs to be an adjustment in the cost or frequency or just accessibility of these items. Because again, if you're not going to spend 1,000 gems a day for months at a time to just unlock a weapon, and then I want to say the math that I remember hearing was like 2 years every day of buying gold mithril is not only thousands and thousands of dollars, but it is 2 years, which is a long investment for an item. And we're going to continue talking about the next point as to why for even some items, they need adjustment themselves because some items are just not very good. But first of all, that's the cost and the accessibility. I think you want players to invest in fewer commanders. You want them to be able to play as their favorite commanders, which is great. But I think these things need to be more accessible than just buying them for gems every day. I think there needs to be more events that give them away. And I think the time gate on it, especially for tier 3s, is a bit ridiculous, in my opinion. The next thing to note on R10 items is the fact that you cannot get items that you put into the items out of them. So again, I have Dwalin's twin axes here. I've got them fully strengthened, as you can see, kind of behind the camera just a little bit. And if I were to unequip this, I had these on just for show because I do not use them. And let's say I want to use the Axe of Khazad-dûm with Cleave on Dwalin because it is a better weapon, in my opinion. We click here. And as you can see, there is no R10 item here that I can put in to even get out the worn materials from, nor can I refund the mithril I've cost. Now, just like every other weapon in the game, at the very least, I would expect you could get worn out weapons back from these items, but we can't even do that. And on a further note, really, this game kind of punishes you for upgrading gear. You actually lose the gear that you have and are at the most get worn out gear back. So I really think all the gear in this game should work like refinement, where you don't actually lose the pieces. You can choose to move things around because at the end of the day, we're using money or mathams, but a lot of us using money to get mathams to unlock these items. And it might be a good item and you might want to use it later depending on who you unlock or who you want to use in future seasons. And it just doesn't really matter because if you use it to upgrade, it's gone. At the most, you're getting worn out items back. So I think that mechanic needs to change as a whole, but it's not something that is applied to the R10 items, which I think really needs to. At the very least, when you have an R10 item on a commander and you go to click strengthen, there should be a big disclaimer that pops up on the screen that says you will never get these things back. Be careful, because I think I didn't think through that when I put mine in, and not to mention Dwalin's effect, it doesn't work the same that it did. But again, I don't use this item and I will not be upgrading any more R10 items until this is changed. And if it doesn't change, I'll never upgrade it because it's just not worth the risk of if an effect's going to change, if the meta shifts, if they introduce some unit or other commander that hard counters whatever you're doing. It's such an investment to now sit the bench with so many gold items inside of an R10 item. So the ability or the inability to get items out is a serious problem that I think needs to be changed. almost immediately. And the last point I want to cover, and I think we could go through and we could break this down for a lot of commanders, but is just the usefulness of some of the weapons. Now, we talk about Dwalin's Axe, as I mentioned, the Axe of Khazad-dûm. Now, I'm in the camp, and I don't think many would disagree, although I think there are some who have committed to it who maybe want to, who do use them. But Dwalin's axes are not the best in-slot weapon for him, and there are many commanders whose R10 item is not the best in-slot for whatever that, if it's armor, it's not the best armor, so on and so forth. To me, it does not make sense why an R10 item would not be the best item for that commander, period. There should be no conversation, but if you go through and look through the walkthrough, if you want to click and look through all the commanders, you can see that people with very wailed out commanders, people who have the means to run multiple R10 items, especially for tier 1s, do not run these items. In terms of the effect here, if you look at like an Elven Dirk with Pierce, I believe it is, statistically, that effect does better than Battle Dance. And looking at the stats too, if you look at just the gold weapons that are being used by most of the wailed out Dwalins, it's not the twin axes, not really by a long shot. Again, they're not horrible, but for Dwalin, the type of commander he is, the army attack for dwarves isn't as relevant because he's the one doing damage. It's less might than any of the other gold hammer or dwarven items we have, and the effect is less than a cleave or less than a pierce effect. And so on several levels, it's just worse. Again, in my opinion, I'd love to hear if you are just the biggest fan of Dwalin's axes, but I do think every R10 item should be the best in slot for that commander. And on my first point where I mentioned the pricing of Mithril or the accessibility of Mithril, I would say 1000% without a doubt, if you are not going to change how much Mithril costs and how accessible it is, these items need to be the best. There is absolutely no reason that you should charge these outrageous amounts for these items. Again, it's your choice, get it if you want to, but in my opinion, if you're going to choose to get that and pay that much, it should at least be the best weapon for that commander. Now, again, it's just one slot, so obviously it's just a weapon for Dwalin. You still have to do it armor, helmet, and accessory. So I don't think it's a deal breaker by any means, but it just allows people to invest in the commanders they want to invest in and get a little bit more out of the ones they really choose to use that Mithril on, because you can only do so many. Even as a whale, you can really only do like one at a time. I don't think many people have more than one tier 3 gold item yet, tier 3 unique item yet. So again, that would be my last point, is that especially in terms of like the accessibility of Mithril and the time it takes and the cost and all that, if that's going to stay the same, I think without a question, the effectiveness of the items needs to change. But I think regardless, if you invest in a commander to R10 and then use the Mithril to unlock it and are using it, it should be the best, if not one of the very best options. And again, for Dwalin, and he's not the only one. If you know the game, you know, if you're running a Khaldun, for example, a lot of people on Khaldun just run the Easterling Spear with mounted might, as opposed to his spear that he has. It's not horrible, but again, it's army speed, army attack. If you know the game, like, you want to be dealing damage. That's a lot of what the meta is dealing damage early. And the effect is, I think, reduced damage for mounted or from mounted. So again, a very similar effect, dealing extra to mounted here in a purple item. Same with Dwalin, where right now on my Dwalin, I'm running a battle axe with Flay, and I'm much more happy with that than I am with his twin axes. So you can go through the whole commander list and see, but I think we need to go through whether they poll the community and get feedback from us. Again, I could get a spreadsheet together and we could go through every single commander and vote and say, okay, what is the best in slot for whatever their R10 is? So, you know, weapon, accessory, all that stuff, and put that forward. If it's already their best, great, you got it. You got that done. For the ones that are not the best, I think the stats need to be adjusted to match what is the best, and the effects need to be adjusted to match what's the best. At the minimum, they need to match it. They should not be worse than a gold or even purple item. But hey, that's just my opinion. Sort of ranty video today, but I think it's a big deal. I think we need the R10 issue addressed. I think it's something that players have done, and a lot of people I talk to are not going to do any more R10s ever again because they feel like they got kind of burned by this. Your gold items are stuck in there. Some of them end up not being very good, and it's just silly. So let's get it addressed. If you think this is a big deal, hit that like button, leave a comment, let the devs know this is an important thing to us, and hopefully we can get a response or some information on a possible future change with the R10 system in the game. But that's going to do it for me in this one, and I hope to see you all in the next.